Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're continuing our ACC football predictions today, and our next team won 9 games last season, including a win in the bowl game, and they returned 16 returning starters, so they are hoping to continue to be a threat in this ACC Coastal Division. They are the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. So Georgia Tech is actually a team that has a lot of promise this season. Although they lost their star quarterback in Justin Thomas, they still run a very simple but dangerous offense in the option. They have 16 returning starters. And they can still be a threat in this ACC Coastal Division. The schedule is pretty tough. They have a tough season opener against Tennessee, and then as in most Power 5 conferences, their conference slate is pretty tough. But Georgia Tech can still be a threat in the Coastal Division. I do not think this is going to be a year like last year where they got to 9 wins, and it certainly will not be a year when they shocked everybody in 2014 and went to the Orange Bowl and won 11 games. But they could still manage to pull off some upsets and be a shocker in this Coastal Division. So they open up the season against Tennessee in Atlanta. It's practically a home game for the Yellow Jackets. But Tennessee, I think, is a team that a lot of people don't know too much about. They're a team last year, everybody thought they could be playoff dark horses, and they ended up falling way short, whether it was because of injuries or underperforming, whatever you want to call it. But this season, Georgia Tech opens up with them. Tennessee did lose a lot of those starters that were there last year. So this will be a fun one to watch. It's on Labor Day Monday, so that will be an exciting game to watch. It's also at the new stadium in Atlanta. So even though this is practically a home game for Georgia Tech, I'm going to give them the loss to start off. I feel that Tennessee probably has a little more talent right now, even though they have less starters than Georgia Tech. I think they're going to be ready for this game. But it's always fun to watch those Power 5 conferences face off against each other, ACC versus SEC. That's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm going to give the loss to Georgia Tech to open up the season. And then they move on to Jacksonville State, a team that is certainly no pushover. We've seen what they can do against teams like Ole Miss many years ago and Auburn just 2 years ago. So they're no pushover team, but it is an FCS team. It'll be a good bounce-back game for the Yellow Jackets, and I think they'll get the win here as well. And then at UCF, a team that I think will do a lot better this season. They really haven't seen as much success as they wanted since the Blake Bortles days when they went to the Fiesta Bowl and beat Baylor, but I think they will do better this season. But even though it's on the road, I think Georgia Tech will be able to beat UCF, Central Florida here. And then they get Pittsburgh at home, a team that you saw I picked to struggle a little bit this season, just missing a bowl game, but probably going lower expectations than what most Pittsburgh fans want. And I think the fact that this game is at home for Georgia Tech, I think they will get the win here. And I really do like this game. And their quarterback situation at Georgia Tech is not horrible. They did lose Justin Thomas, but they're still going to continue to run that offense. They recruit players that know how to run the offense. We know they're more of a running team, not much passing, but that's what also makes them dangerous when you expect them to run that option, you expect them to run the ball so much, and then they use like a play action or a quick pass over the middle, ends up being disastrous. We saw that in tons of games last season, even against SEC foes like Vanderbilt and Kentucky in the bowl game. So they get North Carolina at home. If you look at this, they really don't have a true road game except for that UCF game. So that's 4 games that are not on the road to start off the season. But North Carolina is a team that I think could potentially be dangerous to pull off some upsets here and there. I like Brandon Harris at quarterback. I know he wasn't a star at LSU, but I think he might be what North Carolina needs after Trubisky left. And I'm actually going to give Georgia Tech the home loss here. This is one of those toss-up games. I could see it being in the ACC, a toss-up game for both North Carolina and Georgia Tech. Even though I like teams when they're playing at home, I'm going to give the loss here to Georgia Tech against North Carolina. And that's going to put Georgia Tech at 3-2 going into the bye week. Not a horrible record, 3 wins away from getting to another bowl game. But this was probably the stretches they needed to capitalize on the most. I mean, and if it's possible, it is possible that they could start off the season 5-0 with wins over Tennessee and North Carolina. And if you're looking at that, you're really looking at Georgia Tech being a potential dark horse ACC contender. So coming off the bye week, getting Miami. If this game was at Atlanta in Georgia Tech, I might be picking Georgia Tech to pull the upset here over Miami, but it's on the road. I don't think that bodes well for Georgia Tech, and I'm going to say they're going to get the loss here because it's on the road at Miami. I don't like that, and I do like Miami this season. I feel like they're probably the best team in this Coastal Division. And then they get Wake Forest at home, a team that I really do think is going to struggle this season despite having those 9 offensive starters returning. I think they're going to get the win over Wake Forest at home. And then the defending national champions at Clemson, back-to-back road games at Clemson and at Virginia. Clemson's still not going to be a bad team, and a lot of people don't think they have any talent on offense. But just because they lost big players like Deshaun Watson, Mike Williams, those kind of guys, I don't think they're going to be in as bad a shape as people think they're going to be. And I do think Georgia Tech will lose this game at Clemson. And then they get to go to Virginia, a team that I think could improve potentially. As I've said before, you see in all my ACC videos, I do like Bronco Mendenhall as a coach. And I do think that his offense and defense will both improve, more so on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side of the ball. But I think Virginia is probably that 1 year away from making the big stride. And I think Georgia Tech will go on the road and get the win over Virginia. And then they get Virginia Tech right after that. That's at home. And I think they'll actually beat Virginia Tech. I like that at home. I don't think Virginia Tech is going to be as good as they were last year. They did lose a lot of starters as well. Justin Fuente is a dangerous coach, though. He can always get the best out of his teams. So it would not surprise me if Virginia Tech were to win this game. But I'm going to give it to Georgia Tech for now. So right there, they've already cracked 6 wins, if I'm correct. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're at 6 wins. Going bowling again. They've got 2 games left. Could potentially get back to an 8-win mark, which would be the equivalent of what they had last season because their 9th win came in the bowl game. They get to go to Duke, a team that did struggle last season as well. That was actually out of the norm for Duke in the past years because David Cutcliffe has done a great job rebuilding this Duke program to for many years. People actually feared playing Duke. But this season, though, I think Duke could be a little bit of a sleeper. They're not going to be back to what they were back in like 2014, 2013, but they're still going to be dangerous. Teams need to be careful going to Duke. And I'm actually going to predict a loss here for Georgia Tech. Duke has 12 returning starters, including their quarterback, and I think that will be huge for them. They have 7 offensive starters coming back and 5 on the defensive side of the ball. So I do like this Duke team a little bit, and I think Georgia Tech will lose that. And then the big rivalry game against Georgia, as always. Last season, they had to go to Georgia. That was a great game to watch, fun game to watch. This season, Georgia comes to Georgia Tech. I think Georgia does get some revenge here. I think they will defeat Georgia Tech, and I think Georgia Tech will lose that. That's just one of those games. I think Georgia could potentially be. A lot of people have them picked first in the SEC, and I'm not doubting Georgia's skill one bit. I think they are a very good team. I know I have them picked 8-4. Losing 3 SEC games, could potentially be 9-3, as I've said before. But this Georgia team could be dangerous and could potentially be an SEC East title contender, no doubt. And I just don't think Georgia Tech's going to be able to keep up with them this season, despite their 16 starters. So that does leave Georgia Tech with a 6-6 record. Not bad. A little bit of a step down for Paul Johnson and his crew. He's been there for about 10 years now, or this will be his 10th year at Georgia Tech. So a little bit of a step down. Another bowl game, though, back-to-back bowl games after taking that little break in 2015 when they went 3-9. So this will be a good kind of a not really rebuilding year for Georgia Tech, but at least they're getting back to a bowl game. And hopefully next year they can step it up. Those 16 returning starters, though, could play a factor in some of these toss-up games I have. The biggest toss-up games for me are Tennessee and North Carolina, which could, in a sense, make them 8-4. They will become 8-4 if they could win those. So I'm very curious to watch those and see how Georgia Tech performs because that's really the difference between a potential 7-win season or a potential another 9-win season, which are huge differences, and it also depends on where they will be playing in the bowl season. So I'm very curious to watch this Georgia Tech team. I do think they're going to finish 6-6. I do think they're going to be fun to watch, though, as always, with their offense. So we're just going to have to wait and play it by ear, but I think this will be a little bit of a step down for the Yellow Jackets this season. So please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. We love to hear from you guys. The page is slowly growing, and I'm super excited about that. You know, I love doing this stuff, so we'd love to see you guys continue to subscribe and hear what you guys have to think. We only have 2 teams left in the ACC before we move on to another Power 5 team. So just keep filling us up with like, comments, and subscriptions, and we'll see you next time on the Gridiron Expert.